Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Halloween episode of Pop Jedi. I'm, of course, Rob Delara. With me, as always, Miss Jenna Say What. Jenna, what is going on?
Not too much, Rob. What's going on with you?
First of all, before we start, I just want to thank you again for your continued love and support. We are so grateful for everything when it comes to the show. So please make sure to like and subscribe. It helps us get out to more people. And again, we're so grateful for you enjoying the show. And unfortunately, when it comes to spooky season and Halloween Kills, Halloween is ending, and this is our last terror-based episode for a while, when we eventually get back into Marvel and sci-fi and all that good stuff. But I think we got a good one tonight. So first, we're going to do Top Jedi News, which, of course, is the news of the week. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of scarcity of news, but a huge announcement. So first, in Top Jedi News this week, something that I am really excited about as a fan of this property since I was a young kid. As I mentioned before on the show, if you guys are fans of the show, I have always loved the book. I read the book about 8 times throughout my life. And I was also a fan of the David Lynch version when I was a kid, and, you know, as an adult as well. So when I saw Denis Villeneuve's first chapter of Dune, I was just completely entranced and think it's an absolute masterpiece in so many ways. But the question was, would the audience take on to Dune and the world of Arrakis? And apparently that is absolutely the case, because not only was it a box office hit, it was a huge hit on HBO Max when it comes to streaming services. So people went to see it theatrically. A lot of people watched it, as Denis Villeneuve would say, like a motorboat in a bathtub. They watched it on their televisions, and now we're getting a Dune Part 2 with the release announcement of 2023, which is fantastic. I'm so excited for this news, and we actually have some Dune announcements coming up at the end of the show. But if you guys are fans of Dune and you love Denis Villeneuve's version, which quite a few people have apparently, we're getting a Part 2, so that's amazing. Because nobody really knew where heads or tails of where that story was going to go, if it was going to be a box office bomb. But apparently Dune is part of the pop culture wallpaper, and to that I say, bless the maker and his water. Jenna, what is going on in Top Jedi this week?
So speaking of some sci-fi, it looks like Hayden Christensen is returning to Star Wars. It looks like we are getting our Vader back, because Rosario Dawson ended up posting on social media, Sky Guy, they know, see you soon. And I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm so excited to see him. He's returning to Obi-Wan and the Ahsoka series. So, I mean, I'm waiting on bated breath on this one. I'm really excited to see him back in the role. He's an incredible actor, and I think that I'm so excited to see him return to the role. Next in Top Jedi is, drumroll please, the new Batman trailer is out, and everyone listen to me right now. It is delicious. So
that's the word she's using.
It delicious. Starts off, and it looks like the painting Nighthawks by Edward Hopper, which you may not know that by the name, but it's the diner photo that everybody knows. And there's Edward Nygma just sitting there, and they're like hands in the air. And it's just, this entire trailer is such a roller coaster. You see Catwoman, you see, you know, all these like.
Speaking of delicious, Zoe Kravitz looks fantastic as Selena Kyle.
Whew. Listen.
The vapors.
Listen, but I'm gonna get flustered. So yeah, I am obsessed with this trailer. It looks incredible. It's just a nonstop action ride through the trailer, the whole trailer, and it is absolutely delicious of a trailer, for lack of a better terminology. I don't know how else to put it, but if you have not seen this trailer, dear God, go do it. Robert Pattinson is going to be an incredible Batman, and he shows out of this trailer that he's going to make an incredible Batman, not to mention the fact that he's going to make an incredible Bruce Wayne. So I'm stoked to see this film. I am beside myself to see this.
Now, to get into our topic and our final Halloween episode, we decided to talk about 1981's The Evil Dead. It is actually the 40th anniversary that just came around a week ago. And, you know, a lot of people consider this one of the greatest horror films of all time, which we will get into when it comes to our thoughts and feelings on it. And, you know, really not too much to say about it, except, you know, like when it comes to a low budget film like this, I think it's probably the most inspirational when it comes to producing, special effects, directors. It just inspired so many to go out there and start filming their own works. Like Sam is pretty much the linchpin for, for that dream to make films. So a little bit of backstory before we start, if you guys aren't familiar, that Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi, and they were friends in Royal Oak, Michigan. I actually lived in Michigan for quite a few years, actually not too far away, and I do have quite a connection with Evil Dead. I was friends with Don Campbell, which is actually Bruce Campbell's brother. He still lived in Royal Oak. I lived a town away from him, and I was actually a producer on the Evil Dead fan documentary. It just came out pretty recently and did very well. So congratulations to all of you guys as well for the documentary. But I was to set up this Canadian crew to come to Royal Oak to talk to Don, because Don had actually done some special effects work and whatnot, moving, clocks around and stuff, like when it comes to the original film. And he actually owned the shotgun that Bruce Campbell was carrying in the original Evil Dead, which I actually got to hold, and I'll put a picture up on the show. And we were also invited by Bruce Campbell himself to go to Horror Hound for one of the major anniversaries for Evil Dead. So like the entire, franchise was practically there. It was definitely something. So yeah, Evil Dead and I, do have quite a bit of a history, due to the fact that I did live in Michigan and I was friends with Don. But when it comes to Evil Dead itself, it was just a bunch of friends that wanted to get together and make a film. And, they basically begged, borrowed, and stealed to make that happen. They tried to get loans from dentists, supermarkets, lawyers. They did everything that they could to make this a reality. And of course, they, were making Super 8 films back in the day. And one of them happened to be Into the Woods, which is actually a short film that they did. And it was originally Evil Dead was supposed to be a continuation of Into the Woods, but they turned it into a feature production. The film actually in Michigan, they decided to go into Tennessee because I guess Tennessee was the only one who was actually interested in them doing the production. And again, it's just amazing that this film was just a bunch of friends and family getting together and creating something. I think that's the most unique thing about Evil Dead. And then on top of that, the legacy, of course, that we have 40 years later that, just still continues to this very day. It's pretty incredible. So I actually saw Evil Dead the right way, which was actually through a VH copy of a friend, because it was not necessarily still in the video nasties period at that time, but it was still kind of taboo. Like, oh, I got a copy of Evil Dead. You got to go watch this movie. You know what I mean? So I did watch it, and even then it was considered to be like the most, one of the goriest films ever made, and it was just garish and horrible, and this and that. Like there was such a stigma attached to this film, and maybe you don't necessarily see it when you're watching. You're like, yeah, I don't see it, but that was the myth of Evil Dead, was that it was just this intense, gross, disgusting thing that like nobody should ever watch. So yeah, like when it came out, they they did the premiere in Michigan, of course, and it made a good amount of money back. It actually went to Cannes the next year, which was 1982, and only when Stephen King actually saw the movie and actually decided to write a tagline for the poster, that's kind of where Evil Dead kind of took off. Because to me, even now, like when Stephen King tweets about a film, it's the only critic that matters. So yeah, it's amazing, like the longevity that this film has had, and there's, oh my god, there's so many different special editions. There's got to be at least 50, maybe like 5 that come out every year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
special editions and new cuts and new this, new commentaries, new this, and people buy it up every year. It's incredible. So Jenna, like, what was your situation when it comes to like Evil Dead? Was it something that was, part of your vernacular when you were younger, or
Nope. Like, this was like, I think I watched it once as like a teenager and I was like,
Mhm.
and then like I rewatched it again this week. Because again, it was just one of those movies where I was like, okay. And like looking at it now, I'm like, this is campy as hell. This is why I didn't really like it back in that time, is because like I was into slashers. I was into like some serious horror movies back in that time, and this was not hitting that note for me because I didn't really like anything that was campy. Now as an adult, I rewatched it because, like, as Rob knows, secret behind the screen, but I was like, oh yeah, like I'll dress up as Ash with the chainsaw hand, and he's like, Jenna, that's the wrong one. And I was like, oh, which one's this one? And then I rewatched it and I was like, oh, it's that one. I was like, that's the one. So like it was never a part of like my horror movie like trope back in the day, but now like rewatching it, I can see all the, the quotable like scenes that a lot of other movies kind of like play off of, and things like that, and TV shows and things, because like it is kind of it's campy. I mean, you can tell that they had fun with it. You can tell that it was low budget for sure. But I feel like back in the 80s, there wasn't a whole lot of special effects stuff that you could get. Like now you can go make a horror movie and you can pretty much like find 4 of your friends that know at least some form of like some basic knowledge of SFX makeup, or you just go on YouTube and you can pretty much learn in a day how to do stuff. So like they worked with what they got. And so like, yeah, now that I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, this is good. This is definitely like,
it's interesting you bring up
it.
it's interesting you bring up special effects, because when it comes to Tom Sullivan, which is actually the special effects guy that did a lot of the designs when it comes to the way the skin on the book looked and all this stuff. I mean, they used everything from like stop motion to claymation to rotten meat.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like they just did whatever they could and just threw it against the wall to sit, just hope that it worked. And and I think that's why it's so, like I said, it was so inspirational to filmmakers, is because again, like this is what's really interesting, I think, about this movie is that like even though it's campy, like you said, and it's very crude, you know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? Like it feels like it's part of the time and all that stuff, but you could see a visionary like Sam Raimi peeking through all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
When it comes to the actual narrative and stuff, it's really kind of brilliant. You know what I mean? It really, it was smart. So let's get into the summary, because it's pretty simple. It's just 2 guys taking their girlfriends to a cabin, trying to get laid. Cheryl Williams, Ash's sister, is there as a 5th wheel, apparently.
Yep. Poor girl.
And so
they should have listened to her. Just saying.
So they go to this cabin, and actually, like I said, this cabin was actually in Tennessee. And they faced all kinds of, like just, weather conditions, and people were sick, and there was flu going around, and like the production was absolutely grueling, aside from everything that just, Sam was putting them through when it comes to, just, I don't know, just poking and prodding. And, Bruce Campbell basically just called it, just an exercise in pain the entire time.
Yeah.
Because even something like falling on the ground, outside or something, Sam was, basically just about blood and fake blood. And like he would poke, Bruce's wounds to like, get him to do something, like, piss him off, or, you know what I mean? Or make the blood gush a little bit better or something. You know what I mean? Like Sam was kind of monstrous to his friends, and they just allowed him to do it. But there was like infighting and all kinds of stuff. It was not, it was entertaining and fun enough to do, but at the same time, it was it was also an exercise of futility too, because fist fights have possibly broke out and all kinds of
Wow.
stuff.
Stuff that you don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it was absolute chaos the entire time, but they got it done. And so let's talk about Mr. Bruce Campbell, because Bruce, that's something that like I'm certain many horror fans noticed. Definitely me. It was that even watching him as a young man in this movie, like he just had this star quality to him. I would honestly not call this his best performance. I don't think Bruce would even call this his best performance, but there was something about him that just really stood out, and you just knew, like, oh yeah, this guy could be a star for sure, 100%.
Oh yeah, yeah, you definitely see that in his acting. Even it's that whole thing of like, he's a beginner actor at this point, and like, everything that we do that's like the beginner stuff is always kind of slightly cringe because our acting's a little off, or something's off. We could have done this and this better, but like he definitely had that limelight. He got that limelight's attention.
Absolutely. And like he was just, like I said, like even though it was not necessarily his strongest performance, I mean, first of all, he was out of his wheelhouse. Like Bruce and Sam basically did a lot of comedy together. Sam is a very avid fan of Three Stooges, which is something that is a through line throughout all of Sam's work. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a scene where Doctor Strange just goes boop to like Scarlet Witch. Like honestly, like he's that much of a Three Stooges fan. He's a monster Three Stooges fan. So you could see the comedy slapstick throughout what's meant to be like this kind of serious like horror film. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's another thing that was so unique about it, was that you could definitely see the comedy within. Was that something that you noticed?
Oh too? Yeah, because it was just like, it was so over the top on so many different levels that it was, like I said, it's campy. It's so like silly because it's so ridiculous. And like there's so many times where I was just like, okay, this is such overkill with like the killing or the blood or like something. There was always something within the next 5 minutes that was going to be so over the top that it was funny. And of course, like you said before, that it was a big taboo, like, don't watch this. It's, ghastly. And, at the time I can see that, but like nowadays, it's comedy. Because it's so over the top. So I feel like it aged really well in that aspect.
Well, what's so funny about it is that you watch it now and, yes, you do get that whole thing of like, this was banned from places. Like, it's so tame in comparison to so many other things that have come out, in 40 years. But, like if people aren't familiar, I mean, this was something that was banned, in the UK and other parts of the world. It was part of the video nasties list, which is where I got a pretty good amount of horror education from the video nasties list when I was young. Because those movies were just so like, taboo and secret and stuff. You're just like, oh, I gotta watch that one. I gotta watch that one.
I feel like I probably have never seen anything on that list except for this one, probably.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's not true. You would be surprised what was banned,
really?
back in. Oh yeah, okay. There was tons of stuff that, like is so popular and classic now that we're on that list. Yeah, for sure. Okay. But yeah. So, when it comes to special effects, I mean, was there anything that like really like affected you in terms of, like not only it just being good for a low budget film, but I'll tell you one of mine that really, really like just hit me when I first saw it when I was young. But that scene where Ellen's Cheryl Williams character, Cheryl Williams, the character, Ash's sister, jams a pencil into Betsy Baker's
her ankle.
Into her ankle.
Yeah, that I'm awesome. The same. That one was like, can we not? And it just kept going. And I'm like, stop it. Like there was so many times that it was like shots like that bothered me, because it was just like, yeah,
it wasn't even just like the green blood flying on the walls or anything. It was just that that ankle thing really bugged me. I was like,
My ankle hurt. Like
Mhm.
it hurt to watch that.
So let's talk about some of the shots. Like when it comes to Evil Dead, that I think that's the one thing that really makes it stand out is the shots that Sam Raimi and his crew did. Just like taking two cameras and putting them on a piece of wood and like making like their zoom cam and stuff. You know what I mean? Awesome. Like there's so many amazing shots in there. That really kind of were ahead of their time. Nobody was ever doing that. And if you look at a lot of horror films now, even stuff that's not really Raimi related, you could see a lot of, I mean, you can call it homage, but a lot of people lift from Sam Raimi when it comes to camera work, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Cause like I definitely noticed there was a lot of like shots that were similar to other movies like that were either campy or like TV shows that were obviously kind of spoofing this one as well. They also did those kind of camera angles too. So like, yeah, it seems like he kind of like unintentionally set a bar for other movies to kind of follow suit.
So like again, like I think that's the one thing that really just kind of sticks out is that, I mean, Sam was a visionary, and you could, like you see that in every single frame, and and this is something that he's been doing throughout his entire career, like like those shots and those swoop ins and all that stuff that he created, for this low budget film, like we're in the Spider-Man franchise with Tobey Maguire, and
yes,
and I'm certain they're going to be in Multiverse of Madness as well.
Come on. Really, Rob?
let's not get into it. I'm so excited for that. But so I mean, the thing that I really love, I think, about it more than anything else is just the story and how simplistic it is, and just the fact that these 5 people are just so like young and naive that when you see a tape recorder, and a book, you're just gonna like, hey, let's turn it on and let's get a little read off of it. You know what I mean? Like it's so simple and so
Latin
unique.
is spoken, stop listening to it.
Well, that's the rule. Yeah, that's
stop listening to it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they like they're just so naive, and it's just like and again, it's just such a simple idea that it just works so well. Mm-hmm. There's nothing really convoluted about it. There's nothing,
it's pretty straightforward. But I mean, they only had that one house to really work with, mm-hmm, as far as scenes go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you had, the woods, you had the bridge, mm-hmm, and that's in the house. That was your 3 main sets, and they worked with what they got, and
certainly
it still feels like it was such a large set, even though it really, mm-hmm, wasn't.
Well, let's talk about the woods for a second, because there is one particular, and I'm not trying to get all, woke and angry about this, but I always felt that the scene with Cheryl, being, sexually assaulted by the woods was just like one of those things that was really kind of unnecessary. It felt like one of those situations where it's just like, you know what, let's just do it because, we can get away with it, I guess. And they did it.
Yeah.
But, it really doesn't do anything to help the narrative. And, probably, out of all the, the head cutting and the slashing and all this stuff that we see, the blood flying, all different, mm-hmm, colors of blood, it's probably the most vicious and hateful thing in this movie, I think.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, because it was just like, you could have got the same kind of response for like, the vines just wrapping her and cocooning her.
Right.
And, choking her out like that. And yeah, like, instead of the way that they did it, but, they took that direction. 80s, is different. You could get away with stuff like that, I guess, mm-hmm, but it definitely wasn't necessary for the plot, mm-hmm, at all. It really wasn't necessary. They could have done a different route similarly but without it being a little.
Yeah, because nobody else got sexual assaulted. And honestly, I think it's basically like, just saying it as loud and clear as you possibly can. We really hate Cheryl. We really hate this character,
Yeah.
That's the only heads or tails I can see doing that. We had mentioned before that, like Evil Dead 2 is, we're not going to get too much into Evil Dead 2, but Evil Dead 2 is technically kind of a pseudo reboot of this. When Sam was able to accrue more money for the sequel, that's kind of what that was. It was just kind of like a better version of Evil Dead, which is, I think that shows quite a bit. I would be certain to say that you're probably more of a fan of the quote unquote sequel than you are of this film. Yeah.
Yep. That's where my fandom lies. And I think it's just simply because growing up in horror movies and being a fan since basically birth, and it's like, I didn't understand the campy. It didn't resonate with me. But like the second one was like comedy, but it was also kind of horror, and it had a different vibe to it, but it wasn't like, it was more my speed at the time, but like now I in of them. So I'm okay. I'm good with being a fan of both now, and instead of like whenever I was younger where I was like,
I totally agree with you. And I think the other thing that really works for, in Evil Dead 2's favor is that, I think the characters are probably more likable. I don't think there's really anything, very stand out about, these characters in the 1981 version, except maybe for Ash Williams, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that stand out as far as characters go is just the fact that they're zombie creatures.
Right.
And that's about it. Like you don't get to know their personalities. You don't really like see them. So that might have also been a key factor in why I wasn't a huge fan of it up until, me rewatching it yesterday. So, but it's just one of those things where I was like, okay, I can see this. This is probably why I wasn't like the biggest fan, is because like I need that, like, getting to know you kind of relationship.
Sure. Well, here's something I actually heard from Bruce himself. Bruce had told me that when it comes to Evil Dead 2, it was another situation of Sam and his brother Ivan and Ted Raimi going to their families and all these different people to try to get money to make a sequel. And it was actually, I believe, their mother who cut the check. And as she was cutting the check, she was like, "Oh, another movie, you stupid boys," but still gave them the money, but she wasn't happy about it. It's one of the best things I ever heard in my life.
Oh my God.
You stupid boys.
Oh.
So, like, again, like this is another, it's a special film too, because it's just a bunch of young guys from Michigan, but it's also technically a family affair as well. Like Ivan and Ted, were a big part of the production, and Bruce's brother, and their siblings and their friends, in Michigan, and I mean, it's definitely a winner. Even if it's not, it's very dated for sure. Well, I mean, there's two ways of going around it. I always thought that, Bruce Campbell always had an A-list charm and A-list quality. I never understood why he was never quote unquote on the A-list. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when it comes to the genre, like he's just the king. He's the king of cons, the king of rock and roll, the king of everything. Like he is one of the biggest stars in the world when it comes to the horror fans. But for some reason, it's just not that way in the world. I never quite understood why that isn't the case. I know he's done series like Burn Notice, and I know he's been in a bunch of stuff.
I loved him in Burn Notice.
But he's just I don't know, he just kind of missed the mark when it comes to the quote unquote A-list or whatever. But he's his own like he's his own royalty and his own, like his own personality. And it's I mean, I'll tell you, after spending a weekend with the guy, like, yeah, definitely a personality for sure. Very varied, very varied. But he's it's just amazing how big he is because of this film from 1981. And just the sheer fact of its like decades long legacy makes this film, I think, very important. Because like you said, I mean, something that people, still talk about. I know people that, they collect everything Evil Dead related, when it comes to merchandise, when it comes to like all these different special editions.
When you're obsessed with the Evil Dead, you're obsessed.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're absolutely like you're a Deadite for sure. And there's a lot of them out there. And I guess that's why I wanted to, do this particular movie for our last episode, is because because it is so important to pop culture and its longevity and stuff. And like even just the possession aspects, the cabin, stuff like, this is all stuff that, Sam kind of brought to the forefront, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if, Evil Dead was an inspiration for Sean Cunningham to make Friday the 13th, you know what I mean? Like teenagers in cabins. Perfect. You know what I mean? It's just got such a through line throughout the genre for sure. And yeah, if you guys haven't seen it, it's very dated, but it's wonderful. And if you are a filmmaker, I mean, obviously, like, your techniques and styles, like there's so many different advantages now. Like you can make a horror film on your phone now, but just remember that, like Sam Raimi and his friends made a film with no money, maybe $100,000 to their name, and we're still talking about it in 2021. Yeah. And that's why it's important, and that's why it's here to stay, and that's why we decided to talk about Evil Dead. So
so go out there and make a horror film.
Absolutely, 100%. If there's anything you get out of that movie, like that you can do it, you can make your dreams happen. You just gotta find the right people that believe in you, and if you don't do it, you'll never know if you could. So
sure.
And it's the same thing with with my career and Jenna's career in cosplay. We just did it, and that really honestly for me, it's more Kevin Smith for me when it comes to my inspiration, but I have a very, very deep affinity and love and appreciation for Sam Raimi. I respect the hell out of the man.
Oh, so I love him.
Yeah. So that's it. That's our Halloween episode. Unfortunately, Halloween is over, and we get into turkeys and trees. There's definitely some horror we can talk about in the future when it comes to Christmas horror. Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna leave off with a little bit of a secret. Like I am obviously like I have like horror and stuff in my blood and have for a very long time, but I freaking love Christmas. I hope you guys have a wonderful Halloween. Hope it was a wonderful month. I had a wonderful month of watching horror all day long for the most part when I was home.
Yep.
I'm going to feel like my power is taken away from me. I am an October baby. This is kind of sad. It is every single year, even though horror is in my heart 365 days out of the year.
I'm pretty sure I was conceived during October, so that counts for something.
That absolutely does count. So with that, we are going to get back into sci-fi and Marvel and all kinds of different territory when it comes to pop culture. So I'm very excited to announce, and I think Jenna will when she actually sees the film. But the next thing we're going to be talking about is the box office hit, Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve, and I cannot wait to talk about it. And I think once Jenna, gets into the world of Arrakis, she will understand its power.
I don't know a thing about Dune.
You will.
I will now, though.
It's only just beginning. So, guys, please subscribe. Thank you very much for your love and support, and we'll scare you later. Talk to you soon. Bye.